Hey there, and welcome to your deep dive on, get this, validating yourself.
Validating yourself.
Yeah, instead of, desperately seeking it from everyone else.
Right.
We've got some really interesting sources you sent over,
Okay.
including like a podcast episode on self-worth, and wait for it, a YouTube video literally titled How to Validate Yourself. All caps, very emphatic.
Oh, wow.
It's from a channel called Tam Kaur.
Okay.
And she dives into like ditching external validation to build a serious self-worth, like leveling up in real life.
Love it.
Intrigued.
Yeah.
Me too. Let's unpack this.
And what's fascinating is how Carr goes straight to the core.
Okay.
That shaky foundation of self-worth so many of us are dealing with.
Okay, hold up. Shaky foundation. It sounds like we're building a house here, not, self-esteem.
Think of it this way.
Yeah.
You can't just slap together a skyscraper on unsteady ground, right?
Right.
It'll crumble.
Yeah.
Our need for validation often stems from that same wobbly base. Deep down, there's this lack of inherent worth, so we seek it externally. Likes, compliments, achievements. They're like the temporary scaffolding holding us up.
So instead of solid concrete, we're relying on likes and good jobs to feel good about ourselves.
Yes.
No wonder it's so fleeting.
Exactly. Kyra calls it chasing the wrong thing. Those external hits, they feel good for a second, but they don't fix the underlying issue. Have you ever felt that little rush from a compliment only to feel deflated later? That's your shaky foundation talking.
Oof. Don't call me out like that.
No.
But seriously, that resonates so hard. It's like I need a constant stream of reassurance just to get through the day.
And that's where the cycle traps you.
Yeah.
It becomes addictive, this need for outside approval. So how do we break free?
Yeah, how do we break free?
Carr suggests some pretty radical shifts. One that really stood out was this idea of a male validation detox.
Male validation detox. Okay, gotta admit, that got my attention. Tell me more.
Carr is speaking directly to women who are particularly prone to seeking validation from men, often at the expense of their own needs and desires. But honestly, I think the concept of a detox can apply to any source of external validation we're clinging to.
Oh, 100%. Whether it's your boss, your Instagram followers, or even your family, relying on those external sources to feel good about yourself is a recipe for disaster.
It becomes this vicious cycle where you're constantly seeking approval and never quite feeling good enough.
Yeah.
And that's where Kaur's concept of closing the gap between your public self and your private self comes in.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break that down for me. What is this gap, and how do we even begin to close it?
Think about it like this. Do you ever find yourself acting differently around certain people?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you're more agreeable at work than you are at home.
Sure.
Or maybe you downplay your accomplishments because you don't want to seem boastful.
Ugh, yes. All the time. It's like
Yes.
I'm constantly worried about how I'm being perceived.
That's the gap in action. When you're seeking validation, you're often presenting a version of yourself that you think others will approve of,
Oh.
rather than being authentically you.
So if we're stuck in that validation-seeking cycle, always shaping ourselves to fit in, how do we even begin to bridge that gap and start being our true selves?
Carr talks about building that solid foundation we talked about earlier.
Okay.
And one of the key building blocks is self-compassion.
Okay, self-compassion. I hear that term a lot, but honestly, it sometimes feels kind of like woo-woo.
Right.
Like, how do you actually do that?
It's easier than you might think.
Okay.
But it takes practice.
Yeah.
Start by noticing how you talk to yourself. Are you constantly criticizing yourself, putting yourself down?
Oh, yeah, that inner critic can be brutal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now imagine a friend came to you feeling the exact same way.
Okay.
What would you say to them? Would you berate them or would you offer kindness and understanding?
I'd totally be there for them.
Right.
Offer support. Tell them they're awesome.
Yeah.
I'm way better at being a good friend to others than I am to myself.
And that's what Tauber's getting at. Self-compassion is about extending that same kindness inward. It's about recognizing that you're human. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. You're worthy of your own love and compassion even when you mess up.
So it's about treating myself like I'd treat someone I really care about?
Exactly. And this ties into another powerful tool Kaur emphasizes: setting boundaries.
Ah, boundaries. Those are always tricky. I feel like I'm either a pushover or building walls. No in between.
It's a learning curve for sure, but boundaries aren't about being mean or selfish as some people might think. It's about honoring your needs and values even when they don't align with what others expect of you.
So less people-pleasing, more me-respecting.
Precisely. It's about that self-respect we were talking about. When you set healthy boundaries, you're essentially saying, I respect myself enough to say no to things that drain my energy or compromise my values.
That's a really good way to put it. It's
Yeah.
like saying yes to yourself even if it means saying no to something else.
And that can be hard, especially if you're used to seeking validation from others.
Mm.
You might worry about disappointing them or facing rejection.
Okay, true. But how do we push past that fear and actually set those boundaries? Any practical tips?
Coase recommends starting small.
Okay.
Maybe it's saying no to an extra work project when you're feeling burnt out,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe it's taking a break from social media when you find yourself comparing yourself to others. It's about recognizing your limits and prioritizing your well-being.
Makes sense. It's like putting on your own oxygen mask first before helping others, right? You can't pour from an empty cup.
Absolutely. And as you start setting those boundaries and prioritizing yourself, you'll likely notice some of those negative self-beliefs bubbling up.
Oh,
The ones that tell you you're not good enough or worthy enough.
oh, those are the worst. They always seem to find a way to creep back in.
They do, but Coles has a really powerful exercise for dealing with them.
Okay.
She calls it reframing.
Reframing, like putting
Yeah.
a new filter on those negative thoughts.
I like that analogy. It's about actively challenging those negative beliefs and choosing to see things from a different perspective. She uses this great example in her video about two women, Lola and Athena.
Lola and Athena, tell me more.
So both Lola and Athena struggle with the same insecurity.
Okay.
They both believe they're not attractive, but they deal with it in completely different ways.
Okay, so same insecurity, different approaches. I'm guessing one's more effective than the other.
Exactly. Lola lets that negative belief control her. She avoids taking pictures. She shies away from social situations. She constantly seeks validation from others to try to make up for what she sees as a flaw.
Ouch, I've been there. It's exhausting.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, Athena, on the other hand,
Okay, so Lola's stuck in that negative spiral. What makes Athena different? How does she deal with feeling insecure?
Athena decides she's done letting this belief rule her life. Kaur explains that Athena starts experimenting, like trying new clothes,
Oh,
taking pictures from different angles,
right.
generally embracing her appearance on her own terms.
She's taking back control. Instead of letting insecurity be the boss, she's experimenting and finding what makes her feel good.
Yes, and that's key. Through that process, Athena starts to see herself differently. It's not about suddenly believing she's perfect.
Right.
It's about shifting the narrative from, I'm not attractive, to, what if I explored this? What makes me feel confident regardless of what others think?
So it's about becoming your own source of validation rather than relying on external approval. But how do you actually do that, especially when that inner critic is screaming, you're not good enough?
Shower has a really practical suggestion for those moments. Hit pause.
Okay.
Before you reach for your phone to seek validation from someone else, before you spiral down that rabbit hole of self-doubt, pause.
Literally stop myself in the act. That's way harder than it sounds.
It is, but it gets easier with practice.
Yeah.
That pause creates space for self-validation. Kaur suggests talking to yourself.
Okay.
Journaling, recording the voice note, whatever works for you.
So, like, actually having a conversation with myself,
Yeah.
Isn't that, a little weird?
It might feel awkward at first, but trust me on this. Getting those thoughts and feelings out of your head and into the open helps you process them in a healthier way.
Okay, I'm willing to try. So I've paused. I've poured my heart out to myself. Then what?
Here's where the self-compassion comes in. Ask yourself, what would I say to a friend going through this? We're often so much kinder to others than we are to ourselves.
That is so true. I'd be offering words of encouragement, telling my friend how awesome they are. But when it comes to myself, not so much.
Exactly. So why not give yourself that same kindness? Channel your inner best friend and offer yourself the validation you're seeking externally.
Wow. You are the expert on your ego. No one else can validate you the way you can validate yourself. That's incredibly powerful.
It really is. And that's the core of this whole deep dive, isn't it? It's about recognizing your inherent worth and stepping into that power.
This is about building that solid foundation, setting healthy boundaries, and showering ourselves with the same compassion we so freely give to others. That's a wrap on self-validation, everyone, but keep this conversation going in your own life. Think about where you're seeking validation externally and challenge yourself to find it from within. You might be surprised at how empowering it feels.